You should introduce yourself. Or
Hi, I'm Darrell Schweitzer. Uh, I am not merely the letter B. I have a very long association with amazing stories, going back a frightening number of years. That is to say, I have an interview with Robert Silverberg in the January 1976 issue. Um, and I haven't actually published a story on amazing stories since 1991. But I've had poetry in it recently and interviews. And I'm also the former editor of Weird Tales and all manner of other things. Okay, Derwin, I'm going to just proceed.
Yeah, proceed.
Okay. This is a story called Hanged Man and Ghost. And I have to admit that it came out of a book discussion of Zena Henderson's Pilgrimage, the Book of the People. And I've always wondered what would happen if, one of Zena Henderson's school teachers went to, say, Innsmouth or something. Think of this as a collaboration between Zena Henderson and H.P. Lovecraft. We've just gained somebody else. We've got a Chris Katner. Hello, Chris. I can't hear Chris.
He's on mute.
He's on mute?
Yes, he's on mute.
Okay. Well, all righty. We're going to do this then. All right. It's a game, and it works like this. If the hanged man gets you first, you're dead. If the ghost gets you, you're dead, and you have been for a while. Maybe you didn't even know you were playing. Kids know the rules. There are lots of them. When did this particular game begin? We got a new teacher that September in Chorazin, upstate Pennsylvania. Take the wrong fork past Scranton, turn left, go on until the hills are dark, past a great deal of nothing, until you reach the ass end of nowhere, and that's Chorazin. A lot of towns up that way have Bible names, Emmaus, Bethsaida. There were 9 kids there, so the county school board insisted we have a teacher, and they sent Miss White. I don't know what she was expecting, but what she got may have been the last one-room schoolhouse in the country, and 9 raggedy farm kids, most of them barefoot and none too clean. My sister Lissy was the oldest. She was 13. I was 11 that year. Ooh, you're like Amish children, the teacher said. We ain't Amish, ma'am, someone said. She laughed and looked down at all those muddy toes. It's not about your religion then? Nope. Then, she said, all stiff and proper like, I would prefer that you wear shoes to school. It's more neat. No use telling her that barefoot is better for feeling things that lie beneath the ground, because flesh touches, magic touches, as the saying goes. And not everybody here has the talent. Some of the kids had other talents, but we had been told to behave ourselves, and certainly, on the first day at least, nobody was going to fly. She asked us our names. Lissy, my big sister said. Ooh, how sweet. Is that short for Melissa? No, I said. It's a lizard name. It's short for Liskak. Miss White pointed a finger at me. What I don't need in this class is a smarty. I had thought that the whole point of school was to make you smart, but I didn't argue. Things went smoothly for the rest of the day, at least until afternoon recess when she caught Lissy down by the creek, where Lissy had found a dead cat and was trying to take it apart with a penknife. That was when Miss White really lost it. Ew, that's disgusting. Get away from there. She yanked Lissy so hard that I thought she'd broke her arm, but Lissy didn't scream. She just wailed, I want the head. Nasty, filthy, horrible. Lissy looked right at me and made a sign with her free hand, wiggling her fingers. Ghost. I replied with a circle, thumb and forefinger. Hanged man. Miss White noticed and wiggled her fingers and said, So, what's this? What's this? Just a game, ma'am, I said. Maybe it was because I said it was a game and because I was polite and called her ma'am. That calmed her down. She sighed and let go of Lissy. I don't know what I'm going to do with children like you. I didn't think she was going to be with us very long. Despite this, maybe because of it, my being polite to her that time, or my being Lissy's brother, I was the one she especially tried to make friends with, to make into a teacher's pet. That evening, she had dinner at our house because she was staying with us, at least for a while, and some of the other people in the village were there too. Even Elder Abraham, who is our leader, and his brother Azrael, who runs the general store. And the talk was very polite, not very specific, everybody welcoming Miss White and getting to know her. Afterwards, when she went to the kitchen to help with the dishes, women always seem to want to help with the dishes, even when mom doesn't need any help. Maybe Miss White was trying to act like she was one of us, not just an outsider and a stranger. Anyways, while that was going on, Elder Abraham leaned over to me and said, "Now, Jeroboam, Jerry, it's all right for you to be friends with her, to do what she wants you to do, and show her what she wants to see, as long as you don't do anything that's against our ways. Play along with her. Do you understand?" "Uh-huh, I think so." "Good boy." He made the sign of the wiggling fingers, ghost, like it was a secret between us, though I suppose some of the others saw, but they didn't say anything. So later that evening, I took Miss White to my room and pretended to be interested, and she pretended to be interested in kid things, rocks and shells and arrowheads, and a cigar box full of bugs on pens, and the airplane models I'd built that dangled from the ceiling. She actually did seem interested when she saw my collection of National Geographics on the shelf, a dozen issues or so, which I'd paged through over and over, looking at the pictures of the strange people and faraway places. There were no internets or cell phones back then, not even television in Chorazin because of the bad reception between the hills. And actually, there was only one telephone in town, in the store, and Brother Azrael rarely let anyone use it. So we were pretty isolated, I guess, and I knew it. So I was thrilled when she told me she could get me more National Geographics. And I was fascinated when she told me about places like New York and Philadelphia, which seemed as far away and strange as anything in the magazines. She mentioned that way up north was Niagara Falls, and I really wanted to see that and hear it. I couldn't imagine water thundering. All around here, water just splashed or babbled or spoke secret words if there was something in it and you had the talent to hear, but thundering, never. She didn't get everything she wanted, mind you. Some of us still came barefoot as long as the weather held out, so Miss White put out a basin by the pump outside the schoolhouse for us to wash before we came in, and that was all right. She didn't get along with Lissy at all. Sometimes Lissy would tease and make lizard noises, and Miss White would get very angry and make Lissy sit in the corner with a dunce cap on her head, and as soon as her back was turned, Lissy would stick out her tongue and make the wiggling sign of ghost with her fingers, and the rest of us would try not to laugh or draw attention to it. But mostly we worked at our lessons. You might imagine the bunch of us hunched over strange scrolls from outer space in weird languages. None of us were advanced enough for that. Or at least poring diligently over 100-year-old things like McGuffey readers. There were some of those in the shed, but we never touched them. But no, Miss White had brought us ordinary school books like kids used in Philadelphia or New York. And we learned to read and write and do sums, and she taught us something about the rest of the world. Though if you've never been outside of Chorazin, it's all sounded as made up as any of the fairy tales she sometimes read to us. Miss White did become my friend, sort of. A big, heavy package arrived for her in the mail one day, so heavy that Brother Azrael had to bring it over in a wheelbarrow. And when we opened it up, it was the National Geographic magazines, at least 50 of them. And we shared them in the schoolroom, and for that day at least, when Lissy made the sign of ghost, nobody snickered or paid her much mind. Miss White asked me questions about Chorazin, about the people there. Some of them I couldn't answer. I knew better. It was no use telling her that Elder Abraham was 1,000 years old. She never believed that. That evening, after dinner, she asked to see some of our graves, of the people who lived here before. She didn't say why. It was getting cold and there were dead leaves on the ground. So I wore a hooded sweatshirt my dad had gotten me once when he made a trip to someplace in Massachusetts. But I was still barefoot so I could feel the graves, and Miss White didn't ask me about it, so I didn't have to explain. I couldn't explain some of the things she wanted me to. like when we were sitting among the old graves and I dug my toes into the dirt and couldn't feel anything moving just yet. And she was looking at this inscription or that one of people who'd gone before, protected by the ejaculation of serpents, or protected by the shadow of Nyarlathotep. And I had to admit I just wasn't old enough to know what those things meant. I showed her the bone forest a bit later. It was almost winter then, and the ground was frozen, and be sensible, I was wearing boots and a coat like she was, and we walked by the full moonlight among the leafless trees to where the bones dangled from the branches, thousands of them, because people had been doing this for a long time. Deer bones and dog bones and other kinds, hanging from wires or string, rattling in the wind until they almost made a kind of music. I started to explain that Lissy wanted a cat's head on the first day so she could boil the skin off and put the skull up there to finish hers. Finish her what? Just hers. That was all the explanation she got or asked for. She just stood there, hugging herself as if against a cold, and her voice sounded very strange. I think she might have been crying a little when she said to me, "Jerry, what if you and I get into my car and we just drive away from this forever?" Why would I want to go away forever? I didn't ask. But the next day, sure enough, her car wouldn't start. My father and brother Azrael looked under the hood and they couldn't fix it. I think Miss White went a little crazy after that. Still, things might have been all right if she hadn't gone nosing into places where she didn't belong, places even I knew to keep out of, like the room in the back of Brother Azrael's store where all the scrolls and old books are. He caught her in there one day and he ran her out shouting and swinging a hatchet. Or maybe it was a pitchfork. I wasn't there, and the way people told it was sometimes different. Lucy laughed and hissed when she told me about how Brother Azrael had chased Miss White out into the street and raised up a curse on her right there in front of everybody. My sister laughed and hissed, but I didn't think it was funny because I knew that if Brother Azrael raises up a curse, it's a terrible thing. Despite that, things might have played out differently in the end if Miss White hadn't been waiting for me on the night of winter's turning, which is a very special night here in Chorazin, when we all gather among the standing stones beyond the bone forest. Miss White was outside, standing in the snow, ready for me, when I slipped out the back door of our house, wearing only a thin robe, which was actually my sister's nightgown that she'd grown out of. Miss White didn't question me, but she just followed me as I waded barefoot into the knee-deep snow. I led her past the bone forest. There was a lot of wind, and it was carrying me along like a leaf in a dream. I was floating. The bones rattled and sang. I came at last to the stone circle where the people of Chorazin were waiting, and my mom and dad and Elder Abraham and Brother Azrael and all the rest standing around a patch of ground in the middle of the stones, which they'd cleared off of any snow or leaves or sticks, so it was only bare mud. Miss White had the sense to hang back and hide behind some rocks, so she could only watch as the grown-ups, led by the elder and the brother, made signs to the air and to the stars and to the earth. They took me by the hands and led me to that bare patch of mud, and they lifted the robe off me and laid me down naked in the mud, and I was floating like in a dream, only at the same time I could tell I was really cold, and my hands and feet burned and had gone numb, and I was shivering so much. I was slick all over with sweat. But I started to sink down into the mud because that was my talent. That was what I did better than anyone else. I sank into the mud as if into thick, dirty water. And that was when Miss White lost it again, like she had that first day over Lissy and the cat. There were surprised shouts as she came shouting into the crowd. She came screaming into the crowd, trying to break through, laying about this way and that with, of all things, a tire iron. "Jerry," she yelled, "I'm coming. I won't let them hurt you. I'll save you." That almost snapped me out of my dream, and I sat up groggily, chest deep in mud and very cold, and opened my eyes and said, "Huh?" I saw the men struggling with her. I saw my dad twist her arm and take the tire iron away. But then Elder Abraham and Brother Azrael were crouching on either side of me, and they pressed down on my shoulders, chanting the ancient words that are chanted on these occasions, and they pressed me all the way into the mud until it closed over my face. For after a few seconds, I opened my eyes in the darkness, and Lissy was with me, hissing in my ear and tickling me with her flickering tongue. And she wrapped her long, cold, dry tail around me and held on to me, digging her claws into my shoulders as we sank down into infinite depths. Either I was somehow breathing the earth itself or had no need to breathe. Then she was gone, and I reached out my hands and took hold of the hands of my ancestors, who had been waiting down there as they waited every year, and I led them back up, out of the darkness, out of their graves, into the night air beneath the stars, and I saw them clearly, and I saw the great worm things made of bone that they rode upon, as large as whales, that swam in the earth and reared up to the sky, howling with indescribable voices as the stars overhead rippled and opened up, and the winged ones were among us. But I don't think I heard any sound from Miss White ever again. Actually, she'd done a lot of screaming, so Lizzie told me later. The rest of us were protected by the standing stones, but Miss White had broken free at the end and done the really dumb thing, which was to make a run for it, and that was quickly the end of her. I don't remember any of that at all. All I remember was being very cold and covered with hardening, sticky mud before Elder Abraham himself wrapped me in a blanket and carried me in his arms back to our house, where everybody else followed behind, singing solemn hallelujahs, because on this special night, my talent had ripened and I could do what I had been born to do, and now I was truly one of the people. After that, Mom had me in the hot shower, and I was scrubbing me off furiously, and then she dressed me like I was a baby in warm woolen pajamas and a robe and thick socks, and my father carried me down, still half dreaming, into the kitchen where Elder Abraham and the brother and everyone else was there to congratulate me, and I sat at the table sipping hot chocolate. Elder Abraham made the sign of hanged man to me, but when I didn't respond, he looked to Lissy, and she returned that wide, sharp-toothed grin of hers and made the wriggling sign of ghost, and that, I suppose, was how the game officially concluded. The strange thing was that I only felt sad because I'd rather liked Miss White. If only she'd had a little more self-control, she might have lasted till spring. Lissy got the head, of course. She boiled it until it was just a skull and hung it in the bone forest. She said she had to because very soon, when the skies open up for the last time, all those bones will come together, bone unto each bone, alive, and we will ride upon them when we go to greet our returning gods. Okay, that's the end of that. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yep, Darrell, we can hear you. What was the title of that story again?
The title was called Hanged Man and Ghost.
Hanged Man and Ghost. Okay.
Yeah, now we have some extra time. We can have a second feature, which is very short.
Right.
Think of this as being like the cartoon that comes after the movie. Okay, I have a very short story here called The Climax of His Career. Okay. You have called me a menace to mankind, the mad professor said. You said as much when you got me dismissed from the university after my attempt to destroy the world with gigantic radioactive snails. Nothing more than you deserve, said his rival. Nevertheless, I have invited you here tonight to witness my greatest triumph. I am still not fond of the world, but I've grown impatient with giant snails. A more direct approach is required. I have translated the key passage from the dread Limerinomicon. I will fill out the last line and I will destroy the universe. I too believe in a more direct approach, said his rival, who drew a pistol and shot the mad professor through the heart. The rival looked down sadly on the corpse of the man he had once respected. Then he picked up the professor's notes and read, The end of the world will soon come, from the meddling folly of some, one who translates the doom of the fates. I think that would be rather dumb, he muttered under his breath. He looked up. He barely had time to see the stars go out. Okay. And
the title of that story was?
The Climax of His Career.
The Climax of His Career. Cool.
And of course, the whole point is that the guys The last line the guy spoke completed the limerick and destroyed the universe.